And it showed one of their big disadvantages that it didn't really seem like one until they start looking at it. With their powerful navy, they could attack anywhere on the coast. They could take any city on the coast. But they can't hold everywhere. And every place they take, the Patriots just leave. And if the British leave, who filters right in back? Patriots come right back in. They don't have enough men to hold everywhere. They're not popular enough to convince them to drop the Patriot cause. They can win battles, but it's very difficult to win the war. And the next battle just outside of Philadelphia was a battle called Germantown. It's a relatively small battle, but Washington's army almost won. They didn't win. Washington retreated, but they're getting better. They're getting better. And then Washington's army would spend a miserable winter. They would actually spend 2 of them at Valley Forge. Valley Forge is about actually a little bit further than that, about 30 miles west of Philadelphia. And it's really well preserved. That's part of the reason why you probably heard of Valley Forge. If you ever get a chance, go there. It's really pretty amazing. And you to see the little hovels they reconstructed where how the men lived. That's actually 2 winters there. It's unreal. But it's well preserved. If you get a chance, Philadelphia is great anyways, but that's another neat place to go. Germantown, pretty interesting too. But what are the British soldiers advancing here? They actually tried to get Lake Champlain in 1776, but they were defeated when Benedict Arnold built a makeshift little fleet of nothing more than rowboats with cannons on them, and hell, he was a real hero early on. So in 1777, the British had to wait until June, end of June, because of the winter, and they began to advance here, expecting General Howe to be here. It was August, end of August, and they're down here in the middle of the wilderness when they realized we're all lost. It was basically too late to go back. They had to get to Albany. Some kind of winter quarters to survive. If they would have been caught out in the winter, out there in the middle of the wilderness, their army would have been destroyed. A little bit like what happened in Quebec. Their commander was a general by the name of Gentleman Johnny Burgoyne. And I'm mentioning Burgoyne more than any other reason to tell you how he's an example how overconfident they were. I mean, they sincerely believe they're going to wipe the floor with these stupid colonials. Trenton and Princeton were nothing but minor skirmishes to the British. In fact, Burgoyne, and they're going out to the wilderness with basically no roads, and they know they're going to be short of supplies. Yet he still had a 30 wagon train of just his own personal gear. Rugs, wine, food, carpet, tents, and the rumor has it at least 2 mistresses. All in this long wagon train just for him, because they thought the battle was going to be so easy. And then come September, they're out in the middle of nowhere and desperate. And between his forces at Albany was kind of a hodgepodge, that's a good Dutch word, of U.S. forces under Horatio Gates. Horatio. He was a former British officer. He immigrated to the colonies and then said, I'm an officer, and they made him a general. All kinds of just a hodgepodge of troops. But what he has, he's on these heights called Bemis Heights. And then he said the British have got to attack up these heights. 3 times they would attack these heights. We'd call this series of battles after a nearby fort, Saratoga. The Battle of Saratoga. And it basically goes from the end of September through October of 1777. So I'm just putting October 1777. The first 2, more than anything else, the British were just trying to probe their position. And actually, one of the heroes of the second battle was Gates' second in command. Once again, Benedict Arnold. We can't escape him. Arnold, though, to Gates' point of view, had disobeyed orders, was seen as somebody he couldn't control, and he actually arrested Gates, or Gates arrested Arnold, and put Arnold under house arrest, tent arrest. He was in a tent, under arrest, while the last battle took place. And after a long day, both sides exhausted, the British broke through. And Arnold is sitting in his tent, and through the flap, essentially, he could see Continentals, just whatever clothes they have, but men throwing their weapons down and running away. I mean, it's over. Burgoyne might win, get to Albany, our entire course of history might be dead. Arnold snuck out of the tent. There was a riderless horse going by, and he grabbed the reins and kind of threw himself onto the horse, reared the horse, picked up a musket that was stuck into the ground by the bayonet, picked it up, and started riding with the, basically holding the barrel, and hitting soldiers with the musket barrel. Turn around, let's go, get going, and yelling all the obscenities you could think of. And screaming and yelling and knocking cans down. And then men start to kind of rally, they stopped running, they formed around him. The exhausted British soldiers were coming over the hill, and they're just dead. And when they saw that line of Continental forces around Arnold, they just couldn't do it. They just were too tired, they retreated. The third day, Arnold was the hero. They stopped the British. Arnold was horribly wounded, hit by a musket ball right here. How many could have been hit by right here? If it would have gone just a little bit further into the guts, to the muscle here, what would happen? Die a horrible death. Because it would infect so fast. Somehow, just a little bit below, and he would live, but it would take him 2 years. They dug and probed. They couldn't get the musket ball out. That must have felt good. And so, Burgoyne surrendered to Gates. Saratoga was a huge victory, and who got all the credit? Gates. If you go to the rotunda of the United States Capitol, some of you might have been there. Please try to go if you can. It's really cool. We walk in the front way, turn back and look. There's a huge painting, and it's a British officer surrendering to an American officer. And most people think it's Washington at the Battle of Yorktown. It's actually Arnold surrendering to Gates, and that's on the rotunda of the U.S. Capitol. It's that big of a deal. And the painting was given to us by the French, because after this battle, when word got back of this huge victory, it wasn't just on the battlefield. Burgoyne surrendered his army. They walked back to Montreal. Who entered the war? This is huge. Saratoga leads to France entering. And if we're going to do like a short ID about this, that is the importance of Saratoga. You can explain about the battle, about the invasion to get New York, Burgoyne caught on the wilderness, Arnold was the hero, a big victory, and then the result. Why this is important. That last sentence, because France entered the war. That's how you do a short ID. 2 to 3 sentences explaining what happened at the battle, as much as you can get down. Hopefully win. Don't make up a date. 2008, the Battle of Saratoga. Don't make up a date, but 1777. Explain what happened. Got France into the war. That's an example of what we do for the short ID with the Battle of Saratoga. Yeah.
Do you have consult if you do know the dates of like certain items?
If you could give me like some kind of description, you're okay. The big thing about that one is you don't want to put long dates. I mean, if you're off by 1 year, it's not a big deal. But if you put down little like 1942, like it's in the middle of World War II, then I'll get you. But you want to get as much information you can, so you know the date, put it down. But some kind of description of it would be really good.
So other than short IDs, what else is on the test?
Multiple choice.
Really? You said you didn't like that.
Oh, I hate them, but you got to do them. Because you have to do multiple choice, because those are the kind of questions. Hard ones will be on the test. On your standardized test you got to take, it's something we just got to get used to doing.
Okay.
When I went to school, I would rather just have a whole bunch of short IDs. It's more work, but you just write what you know. Once you get over the aversion to work, I'd rather write what I know. But we got to use multiple choice, and they got to be hard. It was like, no, they don't. I know, but not all of them will be hard. So, Saratoga, big victory. What of Benedict Arnold? Arnold never got the credit he deserved. He thought he didn't get the credit for Ticonderoga, other battles at Lake Champlain, and every place else. So, when the British evacuated Philadelphia in 1778, he convalesced in Philadelphia. And there's nothing more corrosive than somebody who feels slighted, who feels they're not being treated correctly. It builds and festers. They become kind of like a rotten apple in the basket. And soon, it just kind of happened. Loyalist families almost like sought him out. So here's this great patriot who now is going to parties at Loyalist families. He would marry the daughter of a prominent Loyalist. He did not get the command he wanted. And even though Washington would give him an important command when he was healthy in 1780, it wasn't as good as he wanted. So it's building. He got a very important fort on the Hudson that could block any invasion attempt up the river. So obviously a pretty important fort. Right here, because the British held New York all the way until 1784, even after the treaty was signed. It's overlooking high bluffs. It's on a big turn of the river. At this fort, they had 3 big chains, and the links were about this big, that they would pull across the river so no boats could get across. Or no boats could get up the river. There's still the links there if you go to this fort. Anybody know this fort? 40 years later, copying the French, the U.S. would build or have its military academy at this fort. That's West Point. Arnold got command of West Point. If you go there, they have bits of the chain there, and it's, wow, big pieces of rusty iron. So Arnold decided to give it to the British. He would call his defenses down so the British could easily take the fort. That probably would not have ended the war, but it would have been a big defeat. Literally the night before, Arnold was going to have his men stand down to allow the British to take it. A courier going from New York, where the British were, riding away from West Point, he was captured by American pickets, and they found a note written by Benedict Arnold on it in his bag. Now, spies. What happens to spies if they're disguised as either the enemy or as a civilian? What do they do to spies? Shoot them immediately. And there's not, at that time, not even a question. Still today, that is the punishment for spies. If you catch a spy, you're at war, and they're in your uniform, yeah, this is the punishment. That's after World War II. Like in the Battle of Bulge, we lined up all these German soldiers dressed as Americans and shot them all. And they do the same. He was wearing a cloak over his uniform. So when he got captured, he goes, I'm a British officer, don't shoot me. So they let him go, or they imprisoned him and paroled him. Arnold escaped within minutes out his window before they arrested him. He made it back to New York, and that is why Arnold will become the most famous or infamous American traitor. And what makes that such a big deal for Arnold is he was such a hero at first. That's why it's such a big deal. Not just that he betrayed his country, he was a legitimate hero for the United States victory. Yeah.
Why did he want to give it to the British? Just because, like, whatever.
You know, they convinced him the British would treat him better. The British would give him the recognition he deserved. So he would go on to lead Loyalist cavalry in Virginia. There was like a civil war in 1780, 1781. Really nasty one between Patriots and Loyalists. And he would die supposedly quite happy in London in the 1820s. So, but he's this traitor. At Saratoga, there's a monument for this great victory. So they have 3 pedestals for the 3 American generals who were heroes. There's a pedestal, and of course you have to have a man on a horse, right? And that's for Gates. And then one for Daniel Morgan, another general. And then just a pedestal. No statue, not even a plaque, nothing saying it is, just a pedestal. And that's for Arnold. That's a pretty clever way to do that, isn't it? You know, we're not going to give him a statue, but they will acknowledge that he was a hero. I thought that was pretty ingenious. So, Saratoga, big victory. What did the U.S. get from France?
Louisiana Purchase.
That's coming a little bit later. Well, first off, it's now become a world war. It went from being a relatively isolated war in just this area right here, and now it's all over the world. Britain has now got to defend its possessions in the Caribbean, in India, in Africa, in the Mediterranean. There's going to be fighting off of the French coast and the Chinese coast. But not only that, once France declared war, Britain's other enemy said, let's get them. So Spain signed a treaty with the US and jumped in. And then the Netherlands just declared war on Britain because they're mad at Britain. And so now Britain has to defend everywhere. So now they're stretched in. Remember, one of the things that led to this war was Britain trying to pay down their war debt, and now they got another world war. And then they would get from France money, supplies, and troops, and navy. By 1781, over half of Washington's army were French. Under General Rochambeau, really, yes, his name was Rochambeau. And without French help, it would have been almost impossible to imagine Washington surviving those hard years of 1778 to 1780. Without French help, the United States probably would not have made it. So the United States must now do whatever France wants for the rest of our existence. Seems fair? You can make that argument, but I think World War II, I think we're even. Yeah, we're even. We're even, we're fine. It's good, even. So with that, big deal. And so the British have to change strategy. No longer are they thinking, let's get the whole thing. Okay, they might lose this, but they damn well don't want to lose these plantations. And that's going to lead to what's called, excuse me, the COF, the Southern Strategy. And the Southern Strategy would be then the British strategy for the end of the war.
So like a time period kind of when does this Southern strategy idea kind of?
You can see after 1778 when the French got in. So the end of 1778, but mostly 1779 to 1781. And thanks for asking, because I forgot to say that. So we're talking to these few years, and they're thinking this. There are more Tories, loyalists in the South. At least they think there are. They think there's more support in the South for them. And so what they thought was, okay, there's support in the South. Let's rally loyalists in the South. We'll rally them and then defeat all the Patriots. Defeat the Patriots there and hold on to the South. And the word they would have used to defeat the Patriots was they'll pacify them. So they'll knock out start way down here and just kind of then move all the way up and take it all. If the war ends, they want to make sure they hold from Maryland down. And then if these places hold out as maybe independent or whatever, they're thinking they'll be pretty easy to take. We'll come back and see. So let's make sure we get this. And so it goes into 1779. There's a bunch of fights around Savannah, Georgia. They defeat an American army at Charleston, South Carolina. The Americans allowed themselves to get bottled up and they would surrender 10,000 men there. Pretty disastrous. So going into 1780, they're going to begin the real Southern strategy. You notice I skipped a few years. There's some things I admit, get through. But I drew this map up because I care about you as humans.
As humans.
And as you can see, Charleston better. All right, so science. So anybody have another teacher that uses a number head?
Used to.
Yeah, minus one.
It ain't broke, you don't fix it. Now it works for this. I know Mr. Diola still does. Soon it'll all be gone. So here's Charleston. And in command of the British forces there was the same guy who just missed Washington after Trenton. His name was Lord Cornwallis, one of the heroes of the British Army to this day. Lord Cornwallis. It looks nasty up there. 3 weeks, going to be 40 to 50 below zero. With the wind chill, 1,000. So, Cornwallis, he had over 10,000 men. So here's the thing, they're on the coast. They got to knock them out in the interior. So they began an operation to advance. There's hardly any roads, so it's really swampy in South Carolina. Gators everywhere. And they advanced with my red pen. They advanced this way. Now, one thing you might notice right away, that's a pretty long supply line for that time. Supply lines are really vulnerable to guerrilla attack, which we'll talk about more in just a second. Whatever Continental forces and mostly the militia begin to organize around Camden, South Carolina, August 1780. And their commander, Horatio Gates, the same guy who was the hero of Saratoga. Now, John Adams and others wanted to make Gates the overall commander of all U.S. forces in 78, 79. But he got command of the South. And it's a really good thing he didn't get overall command. Because at Camden, he had a couple thousand men less than Cornwallis, and he stood and fight in a big open clearing and left his flanks open, and he put his militia in the flanks. So when the British attacked his left flank, what did the militia do? They ran. And what do you think the rest of Gates' line did? And what did Gates do? So remember I told you about, Washington rode his horse to the front and rallied him at Princeton. Benedict Arnold, rallying his men. So Gates mounted his horse and ran away too, faster than the rest of them. He took off and was gone. The only thing that saved him, the British couldn't chase him as fast as the Americans could run. And Camden was a big, Confederate, I'm sorry. Wrong war. British victory. Gates would be cashiered. He'd go back to Britain. Kind of funny. But, yeah, it's a humiliating defeat. They're in the middle of South Carolina. But now for the British. I mean, really, now what? Now what do you do? They're still now in the middle of here, and there's still patriot feeling. They didn't destroy the army. Washington's main force is up here at New Haven, Connecticut. There's still British in New York. So what do you do? So Cornwallis decided to spread out and run down patriots in this whole area. These arrows don't do it justice. They just send units out to try to get any patriot activity. And as their supply line got so long, they only carried ammunition on the wagons for the most part. So where did the British men get their food? They called it foraging. They went to forage for food. Can anybody guess what foraging means? Yeah, so they go to towns or farms, and they send basically wagons escorted by cavalry, horse soldiers, and horse-mounted soldiers, and they would just go to farms and steal everything. And if they resisted, oh yeah, they'd still take everything, but burn down the farm. As a message, don't resist. We're taking everything. So they send these patrols out to forage and then come back. But think about it as your farm burned down. How are they going to react? One of the things about this is when they went to the Southern strategy because of the Loyalists, they thought they were loyal because they were for Britain. No, most of them were just not patriots. And there are two big reasons why they weren't patriots. And this foraging proved it. The first big reason, there weren't many patriots. I mean, that's not even a word. Let's rewrite patriots. In the South, the first one was, there was no war in the South. There weren't rampaging armies destroying farms and taking their food. That was happening up here. No one's taking our food, we just want to survive. But if your house is burnt down, what might you become? A patriot. And the other thing was this. The British, to undermine the system, actively recruited slaves. The British recruited them, offered them their freedom if they fought for the British. So, think about Southerners. There were slaves in every colony, but most of them were in these plantations. And you do have to get this down. The Continental Army did not recruit or enlist blacks or slaves in large numbers at all. They didn't recruit them. Southerners didn't like the ideas. The British did recruit it. The U.S., the Continental Army, did not. What document did Southern plantation owners really not like? That whole patriot cause. Exactly. What document is all men are created equal? The Declaration of Independence says all men are created equal, endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights. Are slaves equal? Might this encourage a slave rebellion? They did not want this. That whole slavery thing relied on the fact that slaves were not equal. So when the British did this, that encouraged more patriots. Ironically, at the expense of slaves. And what kind of fighting would they do? They're not going to match up against the main force of the British Army, so they would attack the supply wagons and then go back into the swamps and hide. Or go back to their farms and act like a farmer. In fact, go back and act like a loyalist. I love the British. Then at night, go out and attack them. What do we call this kind of fighting? Huh? Why do you spell guerrilla? I'm glad I asked other parents, they all said gorilla, like G-O-R. Which, don't get me wrong, that would have been really cool if there were gorillas out there. But yeah. Gorilla. Now, the term guerrilla fighting, we still have about another 30 years to go to that term was being used. But still, this hit and run tactics, very much like the tactics that the American Indians used out on the frontier. When large British units would come, they'd go into the countryside. How do you fight guerrillas? When everyone looks the same. Cornwallis would send cavalry out to find them, elite cavalry units. And if they couldn't find them, they say, well, if there's an area with guerrilla attacks, we'll burn down the nearest village. Destroy everything in that village to terrify people from not helping the guerrillas, thus creating more and guerrillas. You see the problem. And then they didn't have enough to hold it everywhere, so they would attack a village or go through it, and then as soon as the British left, the Patriots would filter right back in. Hard to fight this type of war. You got to convince people that it's not worth it to help the Patriots, but the most famous of these guerrillas was Francis Marion, aka the Swamp Fox. And he would use the swamps to hide, using farmers and other patriots to attack, and then go back into the swamp. And so Cornwallis spread very thin. In fact, just a month and a half after Camden, 1,000 British cavalry were going along the Appalachian Mountains, basically on a foraging expedition, and they were stealing from all these hillbillies out there. I have no idea what's going on. And thousands of hillbillies came pouring out of the woods and attacked the British right about here at a place called Kings Mountain and routed them. Just totally shocked them. No, they just came pouring out of the woods in the heavy forest and routed them. That's a month and a half after Camden. A few months after that, well, oh, I jumped the gun. Can you still read Nathaniel Greene right here? Washington now, after Camden had credibility, he sent his best down there, Nathaniel Greene, to command the Continental Army in the South. Nathaniel Greene's nickname was the Fighting Quaker, which, by the way, why is the Fighting Quaker somewhat ironic of a name? What are Quakers? Yeah, they're pacifists. So he was, the Fighting Quaker. He saw it's the only way we're going to get peace is to defeat the British. He was the best continental commander in the war. And Greene realized, avoid big actions, recruit, build an army, and what he did is he moved into North Carolina. He moved up here. Cornwallis followed, creating more enemies and longer supply line. In fact, there'd be another battle here, January 1781, a relatively small battle called Cowpens, and this time, in a set-piece battle, 1,000 Continental soldiers defeated 1,000 British soldiers. The tide was turning, and Cornwallis's main force is getting more and more desperate. They're getting more isolated. It's winter. They're going to North Carolina, and Greene is just kind of, come on, keep coming, come on. And then he turned and fought, and it's still up here, right here, March 1781, Guilford Courthouse. And arguably the most important battle of the Revolutionary War, and that includes Saratoga, Guilford Courthouse. Now, the U.S. flag was pretty new. If you look over there behind the map, that's the Betsy Ross flag. It probably had nothing to do with Betsy Ross, but it's a good story. And 13 red and white stripes, that was the flag of the Sons of Liberty. Then they added a blue field to copy the British naval ensign. Then they added 13 stars for the 13 new states. Well, at Guilford Courthouse, the flag was so new, they didn't know what the flag looked like. All they knew, red, white, and blue, 13 stripes, and then a field with 13 stars. So that's the Guilford Courthouse flag. 13 stripes, a field with 13 stars. It's red, white, and blue. That's a pretty cool flag, I think. But that's the flag there. And this is what, I'm going to draw you a map, and this might be the best one of all. Who's been to North Carolina? Just one. You're going to leave here, all of you, if you'd like to go to North Carolina. Because I feel bad for North Carolina. Don't forget what happened there. This will be important for American victory in the Revolutionary War. So, I will draw you a map, also so I can show off. First off, Greene could pick the battlefield because Cornwallis was desperate to defeat them. So he picked a battlefield where he knew it was a big field, but forest on both sides. So his flanks were protected. So let me draw the forest. So imagine, big field. Forest, right? How do we know that's forest? And forest animals, right? Deer, correct? Woodchuck, possum, land walrus, land walrus. North Carolina is covered with land walrus. You can't shake a stick without hitting one. So with that, in the middle of this field was a slight little increase. I'm drawing like the divide there with a hill, kind of like this, and then back down. One you might not even notice, but if the British are here, they couldn't see men kneeling down right here. And this copied what happened at Cowpens on a bigger scale. Greene put about 4,000 militia here with orders to fire 2 shots and run away, because that's what militia always does, right? And then in the trees, they put men with Kentucky long rifles, which were hunting rifles. You couldn't fire them fast, but they were accurate to 200 yards. And he had them do something that the British thought was very unsporting. They shot at officers. Sure, killed enlisted men, but officers were gentle. They shot at officers. And then behind this, 4,000 of his best troops kneeling in 2 lines that would stand up in order and all fire at once, called a volley, when the British came over the hill. And it worked exactly the way he wanted. Cornwallis marched his men in. He's like, I got to attack. It was 1 shot and go. So they got to about 30 yards and fired. They fired their 2 rounds and then ran away. And what they did is they ran and then went into the forest so they could shoot on the sides. Clever, isn't it? So they ran off, and the British thought, we got them. Finally, after months of chasing them this winter, we have them. And so they went charging over the hill, and they got out of order. It was just a kind of a mob. And that's when Greene gave the order to stand up, and they just mowed them down on that ridge. Worked exactly the way he wanted. And the British took off running this way. So you get the point now? Well, that's when Greene lost control of his men. Because his men are like, now we got him! And they just took off chasing. So Greene's men went pouring over the hill this way. And what we have is, let me draw you a melee. Are you ready? A melee. Just men fighting hand to hand. It was crazy. Cornwallis had over 20 cannon, wheel to wheel behind. And he realized, if I lose here, I might lose the war. So he had the cannon open up and fire into his men and the Continentals, and they fired grape shot. What's grape shot? Yeah, think about it. It was like a metal bag filled with 12 musket balls. So probably like a big shot. Wait. What happened was, I know the bell rang, but I want to finish this. What happened was this. Greene pulled his men out. Cornwallis won the battlefield. Short term, he won, right? He lost 1/3 of his men and he had to retreat. A huge victory for the new United States. The Southern strategy failed miserably. Tomorrow, then, the last battle in the treaty. Good, perfect. Now I got to do Vietnam War.
I just keep writing down. I'll be gone.
Okay. I know. I'm just thinking about. Well, I'll film it. I mean, treaty. Battle of Yorktown and then Treaty of Yorktown.
Okay, I can just watch this.
I'll forward that out.
Okay.
I know. If everything goes right, you bet. Huh?
I hope it's still on.
What song?
The camera.
Yes, what song? What were you doing?
I was waving.
Oh, waving to the camera, yeah?
I don't know. I got an investment pitch to make you. See,